Welcome to the Megacast, our live local daily TV, radio, and streaming show about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Today we'll be talking to a number of people about topics of interest and importance to Michiganders like you. Let's begin with what's making headlines on our local news page on civiccentertv.com. Our top story today comes from Adrian Roberts at the Detroit Free Press. The state of Michigan reached a settlement on a false unemployment fraud lawsuit from 2015. Finally, a bill of $20 million. The case, Bateman versus the Unemployment Insurance Agency, or UIA, argued that the state's system for jobless info, or MIDAS, falsely accused thousands of Michiganders of unemployment fraud, resulting in lost wages, income tax refunds, and seizure of assets among the damages. Michigan recognized upwards of 40,000 residents affected by the false claims of fraud, according to a spokesperson for Attorney General Dana Nessel. Nessel, in a news release, said, quote, "This settlement honors my commitment to ensure those falsely accused by their government receive fair compensation for their suffering." And closed quote. Also making headlines today on our website at civiccentertv.com, on our local news page from Kara Berg at the Detroit News. Yesterday, the University of Michigan announced that it will be establishing an independent office to handle cases of sexual misconduct. The new office will report to the Board of Regents as well as the office of President Santa Ono, whose tenure began recently in Ann Arbor. Dr. Ono said that this is one of the first steps for the University of Michigan to mitigate issues and concerns surrounding how the university addresses compliance and misconduct issues on campus and among students, staff, faculty, and university officials. At the Board of Regents meeting on Thursday, Dr. Ono said, quote, "I see this as an opportunity to widen our focus on an institutional basis. I want to support the many efforts that are already underway and the staff who do this amazing work every day. This will be one more step to keeping our community safe," and closed quote. The new office came at the recommendation of outside consultation from Guidepost Solutions, a consulting firm hired by the university in the wake of the sexual abuse scandal involving the late Dr. Robert Anderson. Finally, making headlines today on civiccentertv.com's local news page from MLive's Aaron McMahon. Penn State head football coach James Franklin had some gripes following last weekend's blowout loss at the hands of the University of Michigan at the Big House. After a scuffle involving U of M and Penn State players and claims from Michigan's team nutritionist of flying peanut butter and jelly sandwiches being part of the tussle, as my voice goes up an octave, Franklin, my apologies, let me clear my throat. Franklin is calling for protocols in the famous tunnel at the Big House to change, calling it a safety risk. Quote, "There really should be a policy that the first team that goes in, there's a buffer," Franklin said. "If not, this team starts talking to the other team, they start jawing back and forth, and something bad is going to happen," and closed quote. Something bad did happen. His team got body bagged on the field, just as it has happened time after time with Franklin's teams and his Penn State tenure against top 10 and top 25 competition. Just in the Big Ten alone, he's 3-5 against the Ohio State University. He's 3-5 against Michigan State, among other not so positive records amongst the contenders in the Big Ten. As far as solutions, Franklin stated, quote, "I prefer to talk about these things in the offseason," so he doesn't have any. Continuing on, quote, "But the one tunnel is a problem. It's been a problem. It's a problem, and it has been," and closed quote. For you, that's about it. I mean, you had an issue last weekend. You can't take a little bit of heat in the tunnel. We've seen team after team after team. Michigan State and Michigan have had scuffles in the tunnel. Certainly, a year ago, Ohio State and Michigan had some gripes back and forth, had some exchange of words, a little bit of finger pointing, a little back and forth in the tunnel between those two teams. It's part of the tradition. It's part of the fun of competition. It hasn't escalated to violence. It hasn't gone overboard. Maybe, I don't know, the alleged throwing of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, that's alleged from your team. Maybe look in your house first, James Franklin. Maybe instead of flying helicopters to high school football games on a Friday night, you go and you take your top 25, top 10, top 5 recruiting classes and win some football games first. Look, I'm a Michigan State guy. I'm not going to go arguing in favor of the University of Michigan very often, but in this case, they're doing nothing wrong. You are. You're a subpar head coach that got a ridiculous contract extension and hasn't done anything with it. So if you don't like fighting in the tunnel at the University of Michigan, win the fight on the football field. That's all of our headlines today on CivicCenterTV.com's local news page, along with links to COVID-19 updates from the CDC, the MDHHS, and the Oakland County Health Division at the top of the page. We have a great show on this Friday edition of the Megacast. Coming up next, Frank Locricchio, the broker and owner at Realty Executives Hometown, joins us on the Megacast.
Let's whoop it up for these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. In the face of COVID-19, staying healthy is important. And now the same is true as we face the flu. Influenza has the potential to infect millions, putting lives and the healthcare system at risk. Fortunately, it's easy to protect yourself. The flu vaccine is safe and effective, and with COVID-19 still spreading, it's essential. To see how you can hit this virus head-on, visit michigan.gov/flu.
This November, honor the many people who offer their lives for our freedom at the 2022 Heroes Appreciation Breakfast. Organizations, charities, and local residents are invited to celebrate the men and women that ensure our safety and security. Hear from guest speakers, live performances, and presentations from veterans, officers, and more. Save the date, November 8th, from 9 to 10:30 p.m. at the new West Bloomfield Middle School. Call 248-451-1900 to register.
Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
Let's savor these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Daily TV, radio, and streaming show talking about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about our program on our website, CivicCenterTV.com/Megacast, where you'll find more information on all of our partnering stations across the Great Lakes State, including My Michigan TV, and find all of our full programs and individual interviews on demand. Well, we've seen a number of different impacts of inflation and the fluctuations in our markets recently. And among the different industries that is affecting is the real estate industry, where previously we were seeing quite an advantageous market for those selling their homes. Now, with inflation, with lowering prices and where the markets are at, it's actually shifting toward more of a buyer's market. Here to talk to us about that is Frank Locricchio. He is a broker and the owner of Realty Executives Hometown, joining us on the Megacast. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning, Tyler. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Frank?
Good.
Appreciate
definitely. Go ahead.
Appreciate having you on. So, what are let's go through some of the factors that have changed in the last 6 months to a year or so that have kind of shifted this market from being where it was for the bulk of the pandemic and even a little bit before the pandemic being more of a seller's market to now being more advantageous for those that are actually looking to buy a home.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of us have seen this coming for a little bit with inflation rising and the talk of interest rates going up. And now we're seeing the ramifications of those things. And it's created some opportunities for buyers. So some of these are challenging, but some of these are actually good things for buyers. Biggest thing right now is we're still seeing very low inventory. So low inventory is a challenge across the industry right now. But what we're seeing is buyers having more opportunity to negotiate. So as things keep going through the system of change, when we start seeing more inventory and buyers having the opportunity to negotiate, I think you'll start seeing the pricing get leveled off.
Yeah, and in terms of predicting that, so many people, I would imagine, in the housing market right now, whether they're on the side of a buyer and they're looking to purchase a home, or they're looking to sell their home, maybe downsize, or capitalize on the equity they've made in their home over their time owning it. I would imagine that, given where the market is at, given in the state of inflation in the U.S. and around the world at this time, many are waiting to be a little bit more, are looking to be a little bit more patient before they go into the market from one side or the other. What, in terms of the experts that are in the market, yourself and others and your colleagues in real estate, is there any sort of barometer, any sort of forecast right now for when that market improvement may happen, depending on what side you're on?
Yeah, depending on what side you're on, let's say you're a seller at this point. What has happened is we've hit the peak pricing. I think we're going to start seeing some of that pricing come down. The challenge becomes when you were selling at a peak price, you were also possibly purchasing at a peak price. So sellers still have good chance to get a very good value for their house, and then have the opportunity to turn around and still maybe get a better price on the house that they were going to purchase previously. So again, it's the biggest challenge with sellers right now is there is none, right? We're still very low inventory. We're starting to see the inventory sit a little longer, so sellers are going to have to start negotiating, but they don't have as much competition as even they had last year. So.
Yeah, obviously you work in real estate. You're a broker and the owner of Realty Executives Hometown, and so you're on that seller's side. You're working with your clients to sell their homes. And so, what are you consulting your clients with at this time, or your properties with at this time, to make that sale a little bit more attractive to buyers, given that there is such low inventory on the market, as you mentioned?
Yeah, sellers have one chance to make a first impression. So to make sure the property is ready to present to the potential buyers, make sure that all your major mechanicals have been looked at or have been addressed. Make sure that all the little things like light plugs and fixtures and trim, and they're all cleaned up and painted. Make sure your landscaping is in good condition, and the house is ready to show. Because you never know when you have the right buyer come in the property. You don't want to make a bad first impression.
We're joined by Frank Locricchio. He is the broker and owner at Realty Executives Hometown, joining us on today's edition of the Megacast. In terms of resources, where do you suggest people go to learn more about what they can do from either angle of the market, whether they are looking to buy a home through a realtor like yourself, or are looking to sell their home with the help of a realtor? What are some of the tools that are available through your business to help them make better decisions in that regard and put themselves in the best position in this market?
Yeah, we have some great resources online, but I think the first step is to reach a professional, a local agent, and broker, and let's consult. If you're on the buying side of the equation, let's see what your money really can buy right now. Let's set up reasonable expectations of a home or a style or type price range. Let's get you in contact with a professional mortgage lender, get your pre-approvals in order, get yourself lined up. Because if you are going to make that jump to start looking at properties or purchase property, you want to be able to do that as soon as you find the right property. You might not have a lot of time. As for sellers, we have some great resources on how to get your property ready to sell, taking the steps to walk through the house and making sure all the little things are tightened up. So we have some great resources on our website, realtyexecutives.com, that'll give you either side of the equation. And there's also a great calculator so a client can figure out possibly what they could afford in today's market.
And more information can be found on their website. We'll navigate over there in just a moment. Their website, realtyexecutives.com. That is realtyexecutives.com for more information on Realty Executives from Frank Locricchio and his team. Again, that's realtyexecutives.com for more info. And Frank, you're in the business of getting people in homes, but doing it in a way that is most advantageous to them. So for the buyers on that side of the market right now, you mentioned earlier on, there's given that there is such low inventory, it is now more of a buyer's market. There is some leverage there to negotiate the prices of these homes, and or even at the very least, if you can't negotiate the price of the home, negotiate some of those closing costs and some additional things you can throw into that deal to put yourself in a better position when you do get into that home. What are you suggesting at this time to some of those that are looking to buy a home in terms of what they can leverage in some of these negotiations to really put themselves in a good position when they get into that home that they're looking at?
Yeah, obviously, prior it was very difficult to negotiate price or terms or repairs. Those are back on the table now. We're seeing the opportunity for buyers to negotiate seller concessions to help pay their closing costs and any mortgage expenses. We're seeing a lot of negotiating maybe after inspection to help with repairs. The other great thing we're seeing is lenders are now starting to get creative with financing programs that'll get a buyer into the property, maybe at a lower rate for the first few years to make up for some expenses. But yeah, definitely a great opportunity for a buyer to negotiate a better deal with better terms and get into the property that maybe they couldn't have done that, 6 months ago. Now is the time if maybe you didn't have the 20% down, you can get some seller concessions from the sellers. You can negotiate the repairs you couldn't handle yourself. So it's a great opportunity for buyers right now. But they have to be prepared.
More information can be found and get in contact with Frank and his team at Realty Executives at realtyexecutives.com. Realtyexecutives.com for more information on all this. And in terms of sellers, being that they're in a buyer's market, there is that low inventory, and you're going to be going into some tough negotiations. What's some advice you have for those that are selling their homes to put themselves in the best position to get that home off their hands, get a good deal, but also work with these buyers? Because just as quickly as you can get into those negotiations, the leverage is on the side of the buyers.
Yeah, the biggest challenge for a seller right now is setting the listing price, right? They really need to work with an expert to come up with the best possible listing price so you're not outpricing yourself out of the market or underpricing yourself. You have to expect you're going to do some negotiating. So you have to find that, semi-aggressive price where you attract enough people to the property, you're able to do a little bit of negotiating, but you're still getting top dollar in this market. Now, this market is different than it was 3 months ago. So be prepared. Your listing price is not a price to get over anymore. That's happening very seldom now. It's more of a price to get to. So having a reasonable expectation, you'll be able to sell your property, and then you'll probably have a better opportunity to buy something at a lower price on the other side. So expectations is really the big thing they have to set.
We're joined by Frank Locricchio, broker and owner at Realty Executives Hometown, on today's edition of the Megacast. More information on Frank and other Realty Executives locations across Michigan can be found at realtyexecutives.com, realtyexecutives.com for all that. And Frank, we talk about the impact of this market mostly being from inflation, and one of the results of inflation has been the rise in interest rates by the Federal Reserve and really across the board by banks. And so that affects certainly people's mortgages as they're buying these homes. What advice do you have for home buyers as they are getting into these new homes and getting into, in some cases, new mortgages, or even those just refinancing, to put their best foot forward in those situations so that when the market does adjust, and hopefully at some point here soon is a little bit more favorable in terms of interest rates, that they're not stuck with a much bigger bill than they need?
Yeah. First, for buyers, I think don't get super enticed by a rate you think is really good. You want to look at the overall picture of expenses for that rate, the closing costs associated with it. So try to look at APR, which is all the closing costs plus the rate over the term of the loan. So that's one key thing. The other great thing, like I mentioned before, is lenders are starting to get creative. We're seeing the adjustable rate mortgage back out. Adjustable rate mortgages will give you initial low rate for a period of time, and then they will adjust up or down depending on where the market's at that time. So those are great programs. If your income's going to increase in 5 or 6 years, or you think you're not going to be in the property more than a certain period of time, you can get a lower rate today. We're also seeing other programs like a 2-1 buy down, which is a really interesting program that we just ran across, where the seller can put money in an account for a potential buyer to pay the rate down for the next 2 years. So they get a really low introductory first year, which is probably less than 2% over the current rate. And then the second year it goes up 1%. And then the third year you're back to market. But there's an opportunity to have the initial first few years at a really good price. And I think at the end of the day, it shouldn't matter about rate. It's about what you can afford monthly. So let's look at that monthly payment. So you definitely want to talk to an expert and make sure that you're comfortable with the monthly payment, because at the end of the day, the rate, 7, 8% we might see at some point. Those will come down at some point in the future, but you don't want to miss the opportunity to buy because you're scared of the rate. Let's look at the payment associated with that.
RealtyExecutives.com is the website to get in contact with Frank Locricchio and his team here locally, as well as other Realty Executives locations across Michigan and the U.S. Frank, another couple minutes with you before we'll say goodbye. Any other lasting advice you'd like to give to those on the housing market at this time from your perspective as a realtor, either those buying or those, of course, looking to sell their home in this competitive market?
Yeah, let's start with sellers. It's still a great time to sell. You still have a good opportunity. There's not that many sellers out there, so you don't have as much competition. And traditionally, the market starts slowing up at this time of year, so you have even less competition. And the buyers are out there, they're serious. So good time to keep your property for sale and get on the market. As far as buyers go, we're seeing, again, a lot of creative financing. Buyers that didn't have a lot of down payment now can get in the market with seller concessions. And I think for both parties, there's good reason to be in the housing market. And again, rate is possibly a short-term thing we're going to see go up and eventually hopefully come down a little bit. But I think the days of the 2 or 3% mortgage, those are over. But we had a great housing market before those days came. So just setting up realistic expectations, talking to a local professional will help you through those processes, and you'll be in a good position to buy or sell.
RealtyExecutives.com is where you can go to get in contact with Frank Locricchio and his team locally, as well as others, other Realty Executives locations across Michigan. Frank, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tyler.
We'll take a break here on the Megacast. When we come back, we'll talk about some of the factors that are affecting the market here in Michigan, in the U.S., and of course, worldwide, and our weekly business talk with Michael Greiner from Oakland University. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine. To keep safe and strong. Be happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
Let's whoop it up for these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. In the face of COVID-19, staying healthy is important. And now the same is true as we face the flu. Influenza has the potential to infect millions, putting lives and the healthcare system at risk. Fortunately, it's easy to protect yourself. The flu vaccine is safe and effective, and with COVID-19 still spreading, it's essential. To see how you can hit this virus head-on, visit michigan.gov/flu.
This November, honor the many people who offer their lives for our freedom at the 2022 Heroes Appreciation Breakfast. Organizations, charities, and local residents are invited to celebrate the men and women that ensure our safety and security. Hear from guest speakers, live performances, and presentations from veterans, officers, and more. Save the date, November 8th, from 9 to 10:30 p.m. at the new West Bloomfield Middle School. Call 248-451-1900 to register.
Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
Let's savor these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live local daily TV, radio, and streaming show looking into all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about our program by visiting civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find more information on all of our partnering stations across the Great Lakes State, and find our show on demand on civiccentertv.com. Full episodes, as well as each individual interview that's on our Megacast page at civiccentertv.com/megacast. Joining us now on the Megacast is Michael Greiner from Oakland University, Associate Professor of Marketing in their School of Business Administration. Sorry, Associate Professor of Management, not Marketing, in their School of Business Administration. Joining us on today's edition of the Megacast. Michael, thanks for joining us today.
It's great to be back. Happy Friday, Tyler.
Yeah, happy Friday to you as well. Off to an interesting start, definitely today. So looking at the markets now, we're heading into the late October, early November part of the year. And that's where people are literally looking to do their early holiday shopping. And so the market's definitely affecting shopping for the holidays this year, definitely going to have a big impact on both the stores, the supply, as well as consumers. Tell us about the impacts that they're seeing already and the projections that you're hearing from the markets for this holiday season.
For sure. Yeah. Well, we've been seeing now for more than a month already increases in holiday shopping starting earlier than typically had been expected. You know, usually kind of the traditional start of the holiday shopping season was always Black Friday, the Friday after Thanksgiving. But for the past few years, that's really been moving up as different retailers have kind of engaged in a bit of an arms race, to try to capture more of that holiday shopping crowd. You have to remember, for most retailers, more than half of the revenue that they get per year comes in that compact holiday shopping period. And in fact, part of the reason that they refer to that Friday after Thanksgiving as Black Friday is that that's typically the day that retailers go from being in the red, losing money for the year, to being in the black, making money for the year. So holiday shopping and the impact that it has on retailers just can't be overemphasized. Now, so on the one hand, you have this long-term trend. On the second hand, then you've got a couple of other more short-term trends. For example, with the whole pandemic situation, you've had a couple things happen. One is that while people were under the lockdowns, they were buying more goods. The classic case is, of course, the Peloton workout machines, where people wanted to have them to work out at home rather than going out to the gym, many of which were closed down. Now that the lockdowns are mostly over, people want to be able to go back out to the gyms. And we're seeing a big shift now from the purchase of goods over to the purchase of services in our economy. Now, that is kind of a bit of a surprise to a lot of these retailers who were kind of surprised by the shift to goods in the first place. So they bulked up and bought a whole bunch of goods. And we remember those shortages last year that people ran into when they went Christmas shopping. And now what we're finding is that retailers have so many goods on hand that they have too much inventory in some cases. So you see a lot of them trying to do early sales to try to thin up that inventory, which again is one more thing that's encouraging people to shop early. Then, in addition to that, you've got where, because of last year, people were kind of shocked by the shortages that many of these stores had. And they don't want to find themselves in the same situation again this year, where they're struggling to buy all the Christmas presents that they have for all their relatives. And so you see a lot of people, even though it appears that the supply chain issues are worked out, a lot of people still are kind of gun shy. And so they're going out and trying to make sure that they complete that Christmas list early, that they avoid any kind of crisis like they had last year. And then the final big piece of it, of course, is inflation, which, we just can't escape from. And the bottom line is a dollar today with inflation is worth more than a dollar tomorrow. So if you're able to buy your goods now, you're literally getting them for less money than you'd be buying them if you bought them tomorrow. So it's literally a rational decision for American consumers to buy stuff early. And as a result, you see people running around and trying to get their Christmas shopping done a lot earlier than they typically would. So you kind of see a bunch of things coming together at once, really pushing that narrative.
We're joined by Michael Greiner from Oakland University on today's edition of the Megacast. And in terms of supplies, you mentioned that many of these retailers have bought a lot of their goods in bulk in anticipation for the holiday season, especially given the circumstances of the market over the last 6 months to a year. So that would present that, generally speaking, they're going to have enough of the supply to get through the holiday season. That being said, in so many industries across so many sub-industries across retail, we have been seeing particularly that supplies have been an issue, and that's part of the reason why we've had the rise in prices. So where is that balance in the market going into a holiday season where people are buying? Is there potential that many businesses are going to run out of products?
Well, that's the interesting thing about the whole crisis with supply and inflation and everything, which is that it's not uniformly felt across the economy. There are, as you look at each industry, you can see how each one has separately been impacted by inflation and these supply chain issues. A great example of that is actually the auto industry, where there's this incredibly pent up demand. And because of the fact that some of the automakers have had trouble getting access to the semiconductors that they need to be able to build cars. I mean, we have to remember modern cars are basically big computers on wheels. So as a result of that, there's this pent up demand for vehicles, and as a result, the auto manufacturers are really struggling to fill the demand, and there's an expectation that that's going to continue to go up. On the other hand, though, you have Peloton, which we talked about earlier, and they're actually going through layoffs as a result of the fact that the huge demand that they saw early on is suddenly dropping off the cliff. So it really varies from industry to industry, and I think the key thing that is kind of the lesson that most consumers need to take is that, and this is kind of speaks to the whole shopping early thing, which is look for the deals, and when you see a deal, take advantage of it. Waiting for some better deal or thinking that the supply might come up by the time we get to Christmas is not necessarily a good strategy in this Christmas season. And so really what people should be looking for is what deals they can secure as quickly as possible, and maybe even shifting some of the planning that they made in terms of what they were going to buy for different people.
And Michael, across the pond in the United Kingdom, some really interesting dynamics there of late that have certainly been impacting their economy. We talked about that last week, and now the big news over the last 24 hours has been the resignation of Prime Minister Liz Truss after less than 50 days in office. In an already tumultuous economic situation in Great Britain, that is possibly another catalyst for a little bit more chaos, I would believe, with another change of leadership, and the second in less than 100 days, the second in less than 50 days in Great Britain. How could that potentially affect markets going forward here in the U.S., given that relationship between the United States and Great Britain?
Yeah, that's a great question. And just as an aside here, it's really almost laughable to see how completely this administration completely, flubbed this whole transition. Especially coming after Boris Johnson, who many viewed as, I don't know, kind of a buffoon, to see how Liz Truss could completely screw things up so completely is really amazing. And I love that there's a newspaper in Britain who actually create a live feed of a lettuce head because they made a prediction that Liz Truss would not last as long as a head of lettuce from the store. And as it turns out, the lettuce head survived longer than Liz Truss. So it really is going to be a classic case, I think, studied for many years of a complete political meltdown that was really caused by themselves and their own mistakes. But that being said, it's easy to laugh about these things and to kind of point fingers across the pond. But what we forget about the fact that our economy is so heavily dependent on finance. I mean, America is the finance capital of the world. It's one of our largest exports, even though it's not really included in a lot of our export figures, and one of the largest employers in the United States. And it's what drives some of our largest municipalities, obviously. I mean, New York is basically the finance capital of the world. And Detroit's not far behind. I mean, we have a lot of finance going on here as well. So the reality is that as these machinations are going on in England, and as it's kind of shifted, say, some investors from perhaps betting on American securities, they might be betting on British securities because maybe there's more risk there, or maybe they think that now things are going to bounce back. And it just creates that level of uncertainty in the markets that is really what businesses hate and what finance hates. Britain has been going through very high inflation, much higher than we've had here. In fact, I think the last inflation report for Britain was 10.1%, which, boy, I'll tell you, if that were going on here, people would really be sweating bullets. So as a result of that, I mean, that level of uncertainty, I think, is bound to create some concern among all the finance markets around the world. And we've talked before about the collapse of the British pound relative to the American dollar. We've talked before about the impact of essentially the increases in the inflation rate and in the interest rates in Britain. But the biggest issue I see going forward is that you have basically the fifth largest economy in the world right now, and they're going through chaos. And that kind of uncertainty is always going to be something that investors don't like.
We're joined by Michael Greiner, Assistant Professor of Management from Oakland University, on today's edition of the Megacast. More information on Oakland University programs can be found at oakland.edu, oakland.edu for those programs. Some good news that is coming out of the inflation situation. Some positive effects have certainly been had on Social Security, as well as on our potential tax refunds, tax deductions going forward as a result of what we're experiencing right now. Can you tell us about that and how particularly Social Security is seeing a little bit of a bump up as a result of inflation?
Yeah, more than a little bit of a bump up, actually. I believe it's 8.7% off the top of my head, which is actually the highest increase we've had in Social Security since, I think, the early 1980s. So it's a very substantial increase. And this is on top of the fact that there's actually no increase in in essentially the premiums that seniors need to pay for Medicare. I mean, many folks out there who do get Social Security are aware of that deduction that is taken out of it for their Medicare, and that's not going up. So they're going to see a very substantial increase in their Social Security checks going forward. In fact, I had seen that on average, most people are going to expect to see at least $140 a month increase. So you're talking a pretty substantial increase here. Now, a lot of that is driven by the fact that we have had this inflation and that there are essentially what we call these automatic adjustments within how these different programs are handled, where they just kind of look at the statistics that are available, and then based upon that, these numbers automatically adjust. And so that's, I think, what we're seeing largely with Social Security, and for that matter, with the tax returns. Because when people are filing their tax returns this year, one big surprise to, I think, a lot of people is going to be that the personal deduction, the amount of money that you basically get to take off right off the top for yourself and your family, that's going up quite dramatically. I believe that's going up by 7%. So that's going to mean more money than left in people's pockets. So these are all kind of good news stories that come out of inflation. And that's the irony here, which is that any situation you have here, especially in an economy as large as the United States, has both good sides to it and bad sides to it. For example, with oil prices, everybody hates the fact that gas prices had gone up, although now they're going down a little bit again. But yet the United States is a major producer of oil. So higher oil prices actually help sections of our economy. At the same time, lower oil prices, people talk about the fact that American oil production has gone down. Well, a big part of the reason that that's the case is because of the fact that there has been this decline in the price of oil overall. And so there's been less incentive essentially for these oil producers to go out there and produce more oil. Same thing with inflation. On the one hand, inflation is annoying because, you have to pay more when you go shopping. But yet, by the same token, people's wages go up, Social Security goes up. As we can see, the tax deductions are going up. And at the same time, the biggest impact, the biggest party that suffers as a result of inflation actually are the banks, where what they've done is that they've lent you money at a certain interest rate. And the real interest rate is essentially the interest rate minus the amount of inflation. Well, given the fact that inflation is so high right now, people actually are paying less in their mortgages and less in their car loans, for example, than they were in the past. Bad news for the banks, good news for consumers. But again, it's not the type of story that you see every day, because you're not every day being reminded of it when you see the gas prices rising, for example. But it goes to show that all these things are really double-edged swords. And the hope is, I think, among most people that we're going to stabilize things, because as I described to my students, the biggest thing that business hates is risk and uncertainty. And this is the type of risk and uncertainty that you just can't be prepared for. They try to take out inflation to mitigate, insurance to mitigate that. They try to hedge their different investments to try to mitigate that. But when this type of thing is going on with the global economy, you just can't hedge against that. And so that kind of uncertainty really is what's being a drag on the economy right now.
We'll always have more information on this each and every week. Fridays are Market Talks with Michael Greiner on the Megacast. Michael, thanks so much for joining us.
Great to be here. Have a great weekend, Tyler.
You as well. More program information from Oakland University can be found on oakland.edu. We'll take a break. On the other side, we'll talk to one of over 325 charities and nonprofits represented by the Share Detroit platform. Our Share Detroit interview, our weekly Friday Share Detroit interviews coming up next. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
Let's whoop it up for these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. In the face of COVID-19, staying healthy is important. And now the same is true as we face the flu. Influenza has the potential to infect millions, putting lives and the healthcare system at risk. Fortunately, it's easy to protect yourself. The flu vaccine is safe and effective, and with COVID-19 still spreading, it's essential. To see how you can hit this virus head-on, visit michigan.gov/flu.
This November, honor the many people who offer their lives for our freedom at the 2022 Heroes Appreciation Breakfast. Organizations, charities, and local residents are invited to celebrate the men and women that ensure our safety and security. Hear from guest speakers, live performances, and presentations from veterans, officers, and more. Save the date, November 8th, from 9 to 10:30 p.m. at the new West Bloomfield Middle School. Call 248-451-1900 to register.
Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
Let's savor these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live local daily TV, radio, and streaming show about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about our program by visiting civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find more information on all of our partnering stations across the Great Lakes State, including My Michigan TV. Well, multiple times a week, we talk to charities and nonprofits from across Metro Detroit and around the state of Michigan about the great work that they're doing for a number of people in our communities all across the great state we live in. And joining us now is one of those charities from Drive. We're joined by Christina Berra, the nonprofit coordinator, as well as Eva Jarazszewski, the board member and treasurer for Drive, on today's edition of the Megacast. Thank you both for being with us today.
Hi, thank you. Good morning. Thank you.
Appreciate having you both on. So let's start with you, Christina. Tell us just a little bit about Drive, its background, and of course the mission and who you serve.
So Drive is a family foundation that was started in 2019 by Eva and her husband. They own an engineering company out in Romeo, and they realized that the need in our area is great for children specifically, and they wanted to see, what they could do with establishing a charity. So that was how that became. And we actually support right now around 150 children in a few local elementary schools in our area with weekend meals for children that are on the free and reduced lunch program within those schools. So it's children that receive food from school during the week, but not on the weekend. So we send them home with food on Fridays to cover them throughout the weekend. And then we also have a really large Christmas program that we're working on ramping up right now, actually. Last year, we supported about 225 kids in our area with that program.
More information can be found on driveforchildren.org. That's driveforchildren.org, serving children and adults age 0 to 22 within Southeast Michigan. Again, that's driveforchildren.org. And Eva, in terms of the programs and the resources that are available, take us into that a little bit and elaborate on what some of those different resources are and how families and individuals can tap into them.
Yes, absolutely. So our two main programs are our Elementary Eats food program and then our Christmas cheer program that Christina mentioned. The Elementary Eats program serves elementary age children in 3 separate schools at the moment. We have full intention of growing that as far as we can, but at the moment we have 1 Utica and 2 Romeo schools. So the way that parents can access that is if they're in the school districts that we're servicing, then they can sign up through their school. The children currently enrolled are in free and reduced programs during the week. And then weekly on Wednesdays, we pack food and deliver on Thursdays for them to take home on the weekends. There is a larger means of supporting those schools through Blessings in a Backpack. So our 3 schools are not by themselves. There's actually hundreds of schools enrolled. We just have the 3 that we directly support, both financially and by packing the food and delivering it.
Yeah.
As far as our Christmas program, that is actually open to just about anybody in our area and in the age range that we service. What we try to stay within the confines of our Elementary Eats families, and then we work with Macomb Charitable Foundation to support about 50 of their children, and then we have some direct contact requests that we support as well.
Yeah, partnership is so important for these different organizations to fulfill their mission and also just to kind of share some of these resources so that they're better able to fulfill all these different obligations that they have made and certainly the needs of their local communities. We're joined today by 2 individuals from Drive, a nonprofit in Southeast Michigan, whose mission is to create brighter futures for children 0 to 22 years old. We're joined by Christina Berra, the nonprofit coordinator, as well as Ava Jarazszewski, board member and treasurer for the organization. And Christina, going back to you, all these different programs, particularly in particular, require some physical resources to be able to be provided to these individuals. You mentioned the food that you're providing, much like Blessings in a Backpack, and in partnership in some cases with Blessing in a Backpack. That's a lot of resources, and especially in today's economy, it can be really tough and cost a lot to bring that in. So in terms of the community, what can they best do to help support your organization, its resources, and its mission at this point in time?
So obviously, financial donations are a huge part of what we do. But if people are, more leery of donating financially, then we do accept food, non-perishable food items. We have a specific list and menu of food items on our website of items that we can accept, because we do have a specific menu that we provide to the children. Also, things like Christmas wrapping supplies and bags and boxes and toys and winter gear. There are so many things that we give out during the Christmas period. I mean, we start giving things out in the beginning of November, but winter boots and winter coats are a huge thing that we are always in need of. Winter hats and gloves, scarves, literally any toys that people can think of. So even if you're like at Kroger or at Meijer or at wherever and you see things on sale, those are the greatest things to pick up for us, because we will use every single piece that is donated to us. Hands down, we go through our inventory almost to nothing every year. So,
and then Ava, in terms of opportunities for people to join in on the different initiatives that are being undertaken by your organization, are there volunteer opportunities for people to join Drive and really help them out in reaching so many different children in Southeast Michigan?
Yes, absolutely, and in multiple ways. So as I mentioned, we pack weekly. So on Wednesdays, we have a group of volunteers that comes in and they rotate. They're not always the same personnel. And we pack the food, and then our personnel delivers it the next day. So we're always looking for those people during the school year. But at Christmas time, more than ever, we're looking for people to come wrap. We're looking for people to help us shop, gather the gifts that we have at drop-off locations, arrange them by child, which is actually a very large task to make sure that children get A, what they need, B, what's on their wish list, and that within a family, children are getting comparable gifts so that the siblings can be all treated fairly. So we're always looking for people. Our main office is at 32 Empower Road in Bruce Township. So that's typically where we tend to have the volunteer opportunities. But at times we have fundraisers that are not in the office. So there's always those times as well.
More information can always be found at driveforchildren.org. That's driveforchildren.org. You can also call them 586-228-1900 extension 4447. 586-228-1900 extension 4447. And also go to their website, learn more information about a number of different ways that you can donate. Obviously, traditional donations are always accepted, but you can also help them through other organizations such as Facebook, Kroger, and Amazon Smile as well. DriveForChildren.org, or go to ShareDetroit.org to learn about Drive, as well as over 300 other charities and nonprofits in the Metro Detroit area. Christina and Ava, before we let you go, any other information we should know at this time about your organization and the work that it does to support so many children from 0 to 22 in our local area?
So we encourage people to get involved. It's not always about financially donating to something. Being involved and being able to reach these children is really important to us. So if you have a family need, or if you have a way of showing us where a need might be that we haven't tapped into yet, we're always looking for those people as well. So on our website, you'll see there's an opportunity to submit something that says we know of a need, and we're always reviewing those with our board and figuring out where the greatest need is and where we'd like to support.
Christina, anything else for us on your side?
No, I would just say definitely check out the website. We always have new opportunities that are coming up, and we are always looking to partner. If there's other organizations in the area that know of a need that we could help fill, we are definitely willing to do that. So
one more time, we'll give you their website, driveforchildren.org. You can also email them, info@driveforchildren.org, and call them 586-228-1900, and the extension on that number is 4447. Christina, Ava, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for your time.
driveforchildren.org or sharedetroit.org to learn more information on this great nonprofit doing amazing work here in Southeast Michigan. That is going to do it for this week's editions of the Megacast. As always, you can keep up to date on our show, watch our full interviews, as well as full episodes on demand, civiccentertv.com/Megacast. In addition, we partner with a number of different TV, radio, and streaming outlets all across the Great Lakes State. You can learn more about their original programming and join us in your local area by going to civiccentertv.com/Megacast and clicking through, exploring all of our great partners, such as the Media Network of Waterford, Orion Neighborhood Television, and My Michigan TV, including their free My Michigan TV app that you can find on MyMyTV.com, MyMITV.com, our co-flagship on today's edition and every edition of the Megacast. Big thank you to all of our guests this week, as well as our crew, Jared Clark and Calvin Brown at the office of My Michigan TV, as well as our producer, Larry Nyland, the king of television, as we call him, for booking all of our guests and helping both them and I be ready for informative conversations on a number of different topics affecting you Michiganders each and every day. That's it for this week's editions of the Megacast. We'll return next week with new episodes.